Next up, to round off a fantastic day and our day 4 of the Shared Value Leadership Summit is our Purpose Playbook. Purpose Playbook. Do we have resilience in our companies? Can we strengthen our stakeholders in our companies? Are we leading purpose-driven companies? Do we need roadmaps for implementation of frameworks to deliver growth and value? Do we need a deeper connection with consumers, communities, employees, and stakeholders to achieve greater purpose and positive social impact? I'd like to introduce to you, together with representatives from the US, Hong Kong, and Africato, our CEO of Shared Value Initiative, Tiki Barnard, to have an open discussion and to lay a groundwork foundation on the Purpose Playbook. Over to you, Tiki.
Oh, hello, Sluby. I sometimes wish I had some of your energy, so thank you for that. And the last panel discussion was really, really great. AB, well done, because innovation is so much. Hi, Bobby, how are you? Nice to see you. And we're also waiting for Gail. So hello, Gail. I wish we were in one room together today, but sadly we can't. So I just want to say to both of you, thank you for being here. And I thought we were going to play a 2-minute shared value whiteboard. Were we going to do that? I'm just asking Sluby and the technical team, yes, no? I'm not sure, but we'll carry on in any case. So for me, the fact that we're launching the playbook in Africa, and that's how I call it, because I know, Bobby, you've already launched it on the 19th of May with Michael and all of them. For us, it's also quite a big step. And I think for me, I was speaking to my colleagues this morning, and I said, for me, I see the launch of the Purpose Playbook as the next biggest event within the shared value community and within the shared value world. Because first we had Michael and Mark launch the business management concept for us. And I think it's like sort of 10 or 12 years later. I mean, I know they spoke about it long before that. We now have the Purpose Playbook, and that's what we're going to talk about. But before we talk about that, I want to introduce Bobby Sultan. She's from the Shared Value Initiative in the USA, but she looks after all of us. And Bobby, I'm afraid I'm going to have to share some personal things about you today. So Bobby loves baking. She's been known to take her biscuits all the way from San Francisco to Boston for everybody to share her baking activities. So I've also seen her cat Oliver was also part of our conversations, when we were talking previously. And by all means, I mean, Bobby was the president of the Gap Foundation. I think you were there for 12 years, is it, Bobby?
Yes, 12 years.
Yeah. So Bobby was with Gap for 12 years. And before I move on to Gail, I want to ask you, Bobby, why the shift from Gap to shared value? Because I think you were already involved from a shared value perspective at Gap already with FSG, but then you made the shift, the complete shift to the initiative. So just a little bit of a background on why that shift.
Yes, well, so the quick story is I always thought that I would not work in business, but I ended up spending almost 3.5 decades working in the private sector. And I always had a social conscience. And the best job that I probably had in my entire career was pioneering shared value at Gap. And it wasn't called shared value then because that term hadn't been created yet. But I took an early Porter and Kramer article and tried to implement the strategy they were recommending, but I didn't have a roadmap. And it's one of the things that makes me so passionate about the playbook is that I wish I had had something like that to start my shared value efforts. And now I feel like I can take everything I learned from my corporate experience and hang out with you and Gail and do this work to build a global movement of a better way to do business. And the world definitely needs it right now. So thank you so much, Tiki, for having us here today. And hopefully we'll have a lively, informative conversation for your audience.
So thank you for that, Bobby. I'm sure we're going to. So now over to Gail. So you know what I realized, Gail and Bobby, is that all three of us come from a marketing background. So isn't that, and I mean, all three of us are now involved in shared value. So we have to tell the story quite well today about the Purpose Playbook, so no pressure. So Gail's a person that lived all over the world. She lived in the USA, UK, France, Hong Kong. Now, for the last 7 years it is, hey Gail? Was it longer than that?
8 years, but you forgot something. You forgot something, Tiki. I also lived in Africa, actually.
Oh, yeah, I forgot that. I'm so sorry. That should have been first on the list, hey? Yeah. And then between all of us, I think Gail is the green person, because I heard a story about her planting a tree somewhere in some forest and going to visit that tree. So you also moved from I think you were head of marketing and business development, and then moved into the shared value world. What was your why the move from that part to the other part?
So actually, I come from 20 years in the luxury industry, and I was never completely fulfilled in that job. And I think I was lacking that sense of purpose. And only in Hong Kong, 20 years later, I decided to address that piece. But I was good at business. This is what I knew. And I never thought I would work for an NGO, contrary to Bobby. And so when I first, I was really wondering, where do I take my business skill, but bring that purpose element? Because at that time I couldn't see, I thought I had taken the wrong route and that there was no way to link the two. And so when I came across shared value, I was really excited, because there was the way to use business and to do good business, but to do it in a way that had purpose. So for me, it was an obvious step, and I was very excited when the opportunity came up.
And we're very happy that you're part of our world, because Gail and myself were both very privileged last year to be in class together at Harvard. So what I want to do now, before we go into the Purpose Playbook, and I think the person best equipped to take us through that is going to be Bobby, and we'll have some interactive discussions around it. But what we have is we've got the video from Professor Michael Porter at the launch of the Purpose Playbook on the 19th of May. So I'm going to ask all of our viewers to just watch it and see what Professor Michael Porter himself said about it. But I think when I spoke to Bobby earlier on, she said that that was one of the instructions that Michael gave her, is Bobby, you have to go and do the how of shared value. And I think that's what we have now with the Purpose Playbook. So can I ask the technical team to put the video on for us, please?
So welcome everyone, and we're so pleased that you could join us for this introduction of the Purpose Playbook, which is a big milestone in this field and something that we at Shared Value Initiative are very proud of. Let me talk a little bit about why we did this, why it's important, and maybe most importantly, how you might be able to use this and continue to use it over time. I think we all know that purpose has become a very rapidly growing area of discussion and focus on the part of business leaders around the world. It's truly an inflection point for that whole concept, which was introduced a number of years ago by Larry Fink in a letter to virtually every CEO of a major company. But ultimately, it started out sort of as an abstract idea. I think now what's starting to happen is people are trying to engage in actually doing something. And that's what this Purpose Playbook is all about. Interestingly, the COVID crisis has elevated even more the interest and the focus on this idea. Because today, companies feel that they must see a purpose and be able to articulate that purpose to their customers. And customers today expect this. And they feel that any company today, given the environment we're in, needs to make a positive contribution, not just think narrowly in traditional ways about profit or shareholder value. However, even with the best of intentions, the idea of purpose is still not clear. There's a lack of clarity about what it is, what it means, and even more confusion about what to do to actually achieve it. And that's really what this Purpose Playbook is about. It's a little bit about the how. Actually, it's a little bit about the what, but it's mostly about the how. We need to have a shared understanding of what purpose means, but what's more important is to make it into reality, to actually do it. And that's the how part. And this playbook is designed to provide that foundational knowledge that we all need. So to make purpose powerful, to make it matter, as opposed to just be a slogan or a buzzword or a declaration of good intentions, to make purpose powerful, it must be involving creating shared value. It's not just the company giving something to society or contributing something to society. That isn't powerful enough. What we've learned is that if we really want to move the needle on societal issues and societal problems, we need to do it through the business, using the business itself as part of strategy. And that makes purpose, first of all, well implemented, but it also makes it scalable. If you're using a profitable business model to deliver your purpose, then you can deliver that purpose as much as you want to as many people as possible. It's only your energy that limits you, not any economics. So shared value is critical at this moment because it's an idea that's been around for some time, but it's providing really the deeper way of understanding how to make purpose matter. And of course, we've had a lot of buzzwords in this general field of social impact, like double bottom line and win-win and all this kind of stuff. All those phrases have come and gone, but the purpose, to make purpose powerful, we have to turn it into something real, turn it into something tangible. So the purpose is the why should companies do something, and the most common definition of that is this is our fundamental reason for being. That's kind of if I had to pick one way of defining purpose now that's used in practice, it would be that. So we decide what our fundamental reason for being in, and that's got to be connected to our business. It can't just be a random good thing to do. And then the shared value part is the how. How do we go about benefiting society and moving the needle on an important social issue through the business with a business model so that we can scale it and improve it and drive it over time? That's ultimately the combination that we have to put in place in more and more organizations. It's happening, but there's a long way to go, and all of you part of this session today are going to be the key actors in that process. This Purpose Playbook, as I've said, brings clarity, or tries to bring clarity about how to actually deliver on the promise of creating shared value. And the shared value relates to the purpose. You define a purpose, and then the kind of shared value you want to create really derives from that. And this playbook is designed to give you sort of the game plan for how you can actually do that in a company. And so there's going to be much discussion about this. The session will be a very rich session. This is a big step forward in this entire movement. The fact that we are now having so many companies thinking this way is a huge breakthrough. It's the most optimistic thing that's happened, in business for many, many years. That we've got companies thinking this way, moving this way, and feeling like this is part of their job. And we really have an opportunity now to move the needle on society's important challenges if we can get the business community behind it. Now, we intend at the initiative to continue to learn about shared value, to improve how to do it, to improve the practice, to continue to learn better about the results. And we will really be interested in what you encounter as you start using this playbook. And we like to ask that all of you are willing to share your experiences with us. Because I think the more we can have a common set of best practices in a very new area that most companies don't know much about, how do we actually do this, I think the faster we'll go, the more impact we'll have, and the better the opportunities we have in this society will grow. And by the way, this is not just the US, it's everywhere. Every country has the same need for businesses to matter more than just narrowly through the business as it's traditionally defined. So thank you for being here. We'll look forward to getting your feedback. We'll look forward to your ideas for how you need something more than we are able to give you in this document so far, but we'll do it if we can work in a partnership with all of you on this, arguably the most important agenda right now for the United States and many other countries. So thank you very much, and enjoy the day.
Thank you, Professor Michael Porter, for those words. And it's really true, though, that what is our fundamental reason for being? And I think we sometimes have to ask it to ourselves, as well as individuals, as well as organizations. And there are a lot of organizations. We had a really great, rich discussion on Monday, Bobby and Gail, at our CEO's lunch, which was really great because we had 10 CEOs from across our continent, and they were talking about purpose, which was really, it was such a rich conversation. And I think, as Michael just said, there are organizations that are that have set their purpose and they living their purpose, but there's still too many of them that have not taken that journey. So before I'm going to hand over to Bobby, I want to actually start with a poll, because we want to know who we're talking to. So tell us a little bit. I've now told you about Bobby and Gail and myself. So and I want to know a little bit about our audience at this stage. So please, can we have the first poll up from our technical team? We want to ask you to tell us a little bit about yourself. I'm not sure, is my technical, oh, there we are. So tell us about yourself. Are you a startup or an entrepreneur? Are you from a small business, maybe a multinational, a public sector organization, educational institution, NGO, or other? Because we just want to know when we discuss the playbook, who we're talking to. So it would be really nice. We're going to leave it up. I think that we agreed for 30 seconds or a minute. I think we've lost Bobby, and Bobby have to come online again, but that's okay. We're going to just carry on talking, Gail. So for me, it's, the Purpose Playbook. How do you feel about it, Gail? Because I think for me, as Michael just said, it is the most important, I would say, tool for our shared value movement that has now come to, that we've got now with us. What are your thoughts?
Yes, absolutely. Actually, I did listen in on the CEO's lunch, so I also heard this conversation on purpose. And I was telling the team, actually, how amazing to hear that, whether in Africa, in Asia, and I'm sure Bobby will say also in the US, it's the same concern, same conversation, same focus on, yes, we now need purpose. In Asia, people are very pragmatic, and sometimes even words like purpose can be a bit fluffy. They are like, good, okay, I can have a purpose, but tell me how. What are the steps that I need to take to create more shared value? And that's where the Purpose Playbook is so useful. And I'm really looking forward to working with our members on that, because it's a tool, right? It's a very clear framework, a very clear step. There are examples in there. So I'm really looking forward to using that to help our members take their purpose and then activate it through shared value with that.
Oh, we've got Bobby back again with us. What time is it there, Bobby, in San Francisco?
It's 3 o'clock in the morning.
Wow. And again, a big thank you for being with us. So Bobby, you haven't missed anything. Gail and myself are just talking about the playbook. So we just want to, we asked our audience to tell us a little bit about themselves. So, are you a startup? We've got some startups with us. We've got quite a lot of young entrepreneurs with us, or maybe older entrepreneurs as well, So multinational. So we've got quite the audience seems to be evenly split, between the different sort of sectors that we were looking at. But having a look at that now, I'm going to hand over to Bobby, who was involved in the creation of the Purpose Playbook. In actual fact, I think you led the whole journey of that, Bobby, for the last 2 years. So I want Bobby to kick off with telling us about the playbook, a little bit about the journey, and then taking us into a little bit of the content before we take the discussion further. Thank you, Bobby.
Okay. Thank you, Tiki, and sorry for disappearing for a while. I don't know exactly what happened, and in a minute we'll put up the slides, but first let me just give a little more context. So first of all, it was great to have you play the Michael Porter video, because I think he sets up very well just the importance of purpose for companies, but purpose that remains just words are not going to do anything to change society or business, and that the most powerful engine in order to drive your purpose potential is to practice shared value. So Tiki, I was one of the main architects for the playbook, but I certainly did not do it alone. Georgie Eckert was my co-editor in all of this. We have a purpose team, and then we also involved a large group of practitioners, which hopefully at some point I'll get a chance to talk about. But let's pop up the slides and I'll walk folks through. So what I want to walk you through is a framework, and the framework underpins all of the detail in the playbook, and it's important to understand the framework and the relationship of the pieces to each other. So if we go to the next slide, let's start with, oops, well, I didn't get to do the build. So I'm gonna talk about this. I was hoping that this slide would build, but I'm gonna talk about each.
Wait, can we, you know what, Bobby, we can ask the team, can they go back maybe a slide, or is this you, are you driving the slides?
I think your team's driving the slide.
Oh, okay. So where's my team? Can we go back to the previous slides?
No,
okay. Unfortunately, they can't. So sorry, Bobby, about that. Oh, we dropped Bobby.
Oh no.
I think so. Yeah. So I think, if with Bobby dropping, let me just take over. I'm obviously not as we weren't as big a part of the Purpose Playbook, but as you can see, the main focus and the core of that is leading your organization with purpose. What they've done is that we've got 3 areas that you look at. You look at people, you look at strategy, and you look at operations. But we start.
But it should be.
No, we're having some.
I can help you.
Can you believe it? We're having technical problems from America. I thought that we had problems in Africa. We had some technical challenges yesterday as well, actually, during our summit. But while we're waiting for Bobby, if I can just talk a little bit about the importance of the Purpose Playbook. She's back, yay! Okay, Bobby.
I'm not sure what is exactly happening. I'm usually not on the internet at 3 in the morning, so maybe this is not a regular occurrence, but my apologies to the audience. So let me go through this quickly before hopefully I get not disconnected again. But start with purpose in the center, and then the box that is around this whole thing is a box called culture. And what's important is that you have to think about your organizational culture and how that impacts your ability to deliver on purpose and shared value. So let me give you an example. If your culture is very short-term oriented, it's hard to practice shared value because shared value is more of a medium to longer term investment. A positive example is if you have a really collaborative culture, that's great because collaboration is required both internally and externally. If we're going to make impact for all stakeholders, then we need to engage stakeholders. So that's the second piece, is culture. Then when you go around this wheel, we have 3 practice areas: strategy, operations, and people. And what's important to think about here is how these 3 practice areas emanate from purpose. So purpose needs to show up in all 3 areas. And also that all 3 areas touch each other because they influence each other. So the first area is strategy. So this is where you identify what social issues you want to go after, what business assets you want to leverage, how do you create your own distinction, and then how do you set goals and resources. And Tiki, I'm going to pop it over to you because I think you're going to share an example of a company that leverages strategy well.
Yes, I'm going to share the example of the stellar example actually of shared value, and I think that Professor Michael Porter always referred to it, at Harvard, and I think I've heard him in every single talk that he talks about. He talks obviously about discovery, which we can be very proud of here in South Africa because it is the global example of a very, very solid shared value story. So if you look at Discovery, the purpose is about making people healthier, to enhance and protect their lives. So their start is always with their purpose. And when we look at the Discovery story that started, 1995 in the 90s, and I saw an interview just in February with Adrian Gore and in the Fortune magazine, and some of the amazing things when you look from a strategy perspective, and you look at Discovery, they've identified, 1995, my maths is not that good, but quite a while ago, they've identified a really, really, really great opportunity at the time because the health sector in South Africa wasn't strong from a private sector perspective, and primary health care was a really big problem. So Adrian, being an actuary, I can never pronounce that word, so opportunities in the health insurance, and the rest is history. So Discovery incentivizes their clients, and today they operate in 23 countries. So strategically, when you look at the Discovery story and you follow it, because it was one of our case studies at Harvard, they've not only taken the shared value framework when you look at reconceiving products and markets and looked at their supply chain, and so their source of distinction, because when you look at it from a strategic perspective, you have to look at things, you've got to identify the opportunity, you've got to look at what's the source of distinction, what is going to differentiate you from other organizations, and that's what you have to look at from an organizational perspective as well. And then you have to set your strategic goals. And if you look at Discovery, was it this year or last year they went into the banking industry? So they continuously innovating with their goals. And also, I think Adrian shared, as I said, they've got 50 million light years of data available to them. So you can just imagine what an enormous asset that is from a strategic perspective. So yes, Bobby, strategy from a purpose playbook perspective, starting with strategy, obviously after you've defined your purpose as an organization, is your next step that you move into. And really, yes, Discovery is a great story, but we've got some other good stories as well in Africa as well, with Safaricom. I think that Safaricom, when you look at Safaricom, 50% of the Kenyan population, uses the Safaricom platform, and they've also done amazing stuff. But I wanted to share in a little bit more detail the Discovery story for you from a strategic perspective, because I think when you look at their strategy, it's very well defined. That roadmap is there, and I think they look at that, possibly from a global perspective, because as I said, they're in 23 countries and China is the biggest one. So thanks, Bobby, for allowing me to talk about our own stellar example of shared value, created right here on the South Africa, and a global example that's used by many. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Tiki. It certainly is a gold standard. And I took the class a year before you at HBS and had a chance to hear from Adrian Gore, and it's quite a compelling story, and I think one that inspires shared value practitioners around the world. So now I'm going to move to the next section, operations. So this one has three really distinct practice areas. The first is innovating for scale. So how do you move from having pilots to really leveraging your core business to drive impact at scale? How do you create new models of cooperation? It was great to see the range of organizations that are attending today. We need to think about how do we work together? How do we create these new connections based on companies trying to lever their core business to create societal impact? And then thirdly, how do we make sure we measure and report? Because measurement is important for holding ourselves accountable, but it's also important for showing others, for getting funding, in some cases for influencing policy. So Gail, you were going to talk about an operations example, so I'm going to throw it over to you.
Yes, and so the example I'm going to give was not necessarily intentionally shared value at the beginning, and so that's where the Purpose Playbook can now help companies be more intentional about it. But nevertheless, it's a very good operations example. And so in Hong Kong, we have a company called Novatex. They're a yarn spinner. And they had a pain point, which was that they always had to overproduce a little bit of textile, but that overproduction wasn't getting sold to the customer unless there was a default in the production. And so that overproduction was piling up in the warehouse. That's, in Hong Kong, we have very little space, so that was an issue in itself. This yarn spinner is spinning cashmere, among others, so that's a lot of value captured in that textile waste. The fashion industry produces an enormous amount of textile waste, so that's another pain point for society. In Hong Kong, we send 390 tons daily of textile waste to landfill. And so the Novatex collaborated first, so that answers the point number 5, the cooperation. They collaborated with Hong Kong RITA, which is a Hong Kong Research Institute for Textile, I forget the A, and came up with a way to upcycle textile waste into new fiber that then Novatex was able to spin again into new yarn that can be woven again and sold. So that solves a pain point for the business. It also solves a pain point for society. So clearly it's creating shared value. They can save textile waste from going to landfill, and they can recapture the value of the yarn. What's also interesting is that by doing so, they solve the pain point for the industry, because talking about innovating for scale, they then had hotels or even schools knocking on their door because they had textile waste that they wanted to upcycle. And so that created a new revenue stream as well for the business. So I think it's a very interesting way of illustrating the operations side of the Purpose Playbook.
Thank you, Gail. That's a fantastic example, and hopefully will inspire some of the entrepreneurs that are out there listening. So yes, the last one is Pardon?
Sorry, yeah, they're not a huge company, so for entrepreneurs around, it's a very good example.
Yes, and most big companies, or all big companies, started as small companies at one point. So we encourage that innovation. The last area is people. So people make all this happen. So people play an important role, but oftentimes are not thought of immediately. So we wanted to really call attention to that. And it includes how you design your organization. So break down silos. If you're a smaller organization, as you build it, think about how do you build it to create shared value, making sure all the people are talking to each other. how do you actually acquire and develop talent? And in some cases, if you're a larger organization that's transforming to shared value, how do you help employees who may not have practiced it before learn new practices to be more effective? And then finally, how do we engage not only internal stakeholders, but external stakeholders, and how do we communicate to them? And I'll just give you a couple of quick examples. Nestle, for example, they think about talent not just inside their building for shared value, but outside of their company. So they have an advisory board of shared value experts, including Mark Kramer. Another example is Enel Energy. It's a big energy, global energy company out of Rome, and I think they've been at your summit before, Tiki, that they started with a division called Enel Green Energy that is now the way the company operates as a whole. So they incubated shared value in a smaller part of the company. That division CEO became the company CEO, and now the company as a whole is shared value. So that's another example. So overall, that's the model. That's how it works. You heard some examples, I hope, that we're illuminating. And if we go to the next slide, I just want to quickly show you what is in the playbook itself. And, frameworks are great, but frameworks alone don't provide enough detail for the practitioner. And we built this for the practitioner. So first, we take every practice, we define it, and we provide specific action steps. And one of the key things to think about, that these action steps should not be viewed as a recipe, because every company is different. Every shared value venture is different. So use this as a guide to jog your thinking rather than thinking about it as a recipe. We provide examples for each of these practices, and we try to get specific so you don't have to read a big case study to find the example, but we include the case studies if you'd like to dig in. There's some exercises at the front of the book in the public version, and if you're a member of the Shared Value Africa Initiative, you'll get access to more exercises for all of the practices. And then finally, there are checklists available to make sure that you're thinking about all the things you need to think about. So that's a quick drive-by, and Tiki, I'm going to now pass it back to you.
Thank you for that, Bobby, and thank you, Gail. There's one question that I want to ask that keeps on coming up from the playbook perspective, because, we've got a very, very young population on the Africa continent, and we were talking about it yesterday because we had a really great day around entrepreneurship, talking to young entrepreneurs about their businesses. And I think the question it actually came up from one of our team members, Mariette, and I think, Bobby, we've also discussed that before. Should there be a different or an adapted playbook, for our smaller organizations, our startups and our young entrepreneurs? What are your views on that?
Well, I don't know if we wanted to do a poll, Tiki, before.
Yes, we do have one, yeah.
Or I don't know if, just time-wise. I guess Mariette.
We've got time.
Okay, so she's put up the poll.
Okay, you go, Bobby. You can read the poll.
Okay. So do you think small and medium-sized enterprises, and specifically entrepreneurial businesses, need a different shared value approach than large corporates? So if you could please vote, it would be very helpful for us to see what you are interested in. And once we see the poll, I'll just share a little bit more of what our current thinking is. So.
Yeah, I think for us on the Africa continent, what we were talking about yesterday, because it was really so inspiring to see all these young people from across Africa, talking about what they're doing, and most of them talking shared value, which was just so, heartwarming to say the least, because it was really great to hear them talk about what they're doing from a business perspective and how they've brought in shared value into their business. So I think for us, what we always think from an Africa perspective, and I'm not talking for the rest of the world, is that I think that our young entrepreneurs, because of our societal issues that we have and our economic challenges that we have as well, is that you often, as a startup, because you cannot find employment, you might even be a university graduate with 2 MBAs, but you cannot find employment. So therefore, what you do is you become innovative, and you start your own business, and you start your business because you want to address a societal issue, because you can see the societal issue within the community that you live in, and you start your own business from that perspective. So the shared value concept is already there, but so many of them they don't call it shared value. For them it's just a way of doing business, which is sometimes very inspiring to see. So yeah, let's see what the result of the poll is.
So that is very interesting. We were having a debate about this as we were getting prepped, and Tiki, it looks like you were right. That of the practices would be similar. And one of the things we are thinking about, and we are talking to funders, because we are a not-for-profit organization, of can we do a companion piece for entrepreneurs? So it's one of the things we are looking at, because to your point, Tiki, it is so incredible that so many people who are starting businesses, whether they're young or in the middle of their career, that to have a sense of purpose beyond profits is so heartening, because we need business leaders to think this way. This needs to be the way we do business. So if we can encourage them and give them tools as entrepreneurs, that would be great. So it's good to know that the core of this seems like it would be similar, but perhaps we can look at a way we can put a lens on it that is more entrepreneurial. So that is really helpful.
What do you think, Gail? Should there be I know that Gail and Bobby and them are going to do it, if we can get the funding, hey, Bobby, because that's always the big thing. Is that, Gail, and what is it like in Hong Kong? Do you have more established businesses there, or do you also have a lot of young entrepreneurs?
We do.
In your world?
We do. I think you have both the very big multinationals who settle in Hong Kong to serve Asia, and you have a lot of young entrepreneurs. So I also think that when you're starting a business, it's because you identify a problem in society, and therefore there's a high chance that you will be creating shared value. I think it's harder for bigger companies to shift once they've got stuck a little bit in a way of doing business where they just look at the short-term reporting. They've been doing business for so long, they forget maybe why they were in business originally. And it's also harder for very big corporations to collaborate, I think, because they have very set ways. So all these things are aspects that are much more accessible for smaller organizations. So we see a lot of social enterprises, that's what we would call them, in Hong Kong.
Now, and what you're reiterating is something that what Mark said, is that, we live in this world where we have these glossy sustainability reports. And I just so loved what he said about that in his talk of the 19th of March about, we almost got to try and look at this superficial world that we live in, and we have to become more real. Because for me, from a leadership perspective as well, is that I think that the people out there are looking for authentic, our leaders needs to be authentic from that perspective. And I think for me, when I look at the Purpose Playbook, is that we had a long discussion yesterday in our masterclass with my colleague Immaculata. We had a masterclass in the afternoon, and we talked about purpose, and how important it is for an organization. Because often what we find, and we're finding it here as well, and I'm sure you might have found it, and maybe you can add to what I'm saying, is that sometimes the purpose of the company is defined, and only the top executives know about what the real purpose of the organization is. And actually, when you walk into the reception area, the receptionists have no idea what the purpose of the organization is. And for me, I sometimes think when we look at the people side of our Purpose Playbook, that needs to become such a big part of it, is that everybody needs to live our purpose, as organizations. I don't know if you want to add to that, Bobby, maybe?
Yeah, I think that one of the challenges is when companies do take a superficial approach to purpose, that they feel like they need to hire a marketing firm or a communications firm, and they come up with a great statement, but they don't operationalize it. And the data actually shows that there was a study commissioned by Ernst & Young several years ago, and the Harvard Business Review Analytics Services did a survey of almost 500 global executives. And they asked them, is purpose important? Is it a part of your innovation engine? And the answers were in the 80% plus. So business leaders globally said that purpose is important. But then when you ask these same executives, is this in your strategy? Is it in your operations? Can your employees articulate it? 50% said it was baked into their strategy, but only about a third said it was in their operations or that their employees could articulate it. And one of the powers of shared value is because it levers the core business, your people have to understand it if they're going to drive it through the business. And so that's another reason why shared value is so powerful, because if you are making product or managing a supply chain or dealing with customer service through a shared value lens, you have to understand your company's purpose.
Absolutely. I think, Gail, I'm going to ask our technical team to bring up the next poll.
I think it's the right time.
Yeah, it is the right time. Okay, that's over to you, Gail.
So what do you think businesses need most to create social impact? Is it more budget? Is it new technology? More regulation from government? New thinking or new culture? Or more pressure from civil society? Of course, I think there's a right answer to this.
I think
so we'll see what the audience says.
Yeah.
But it goes back to, for me, this question goes back to the Purpose Playbook framework. And that's the first element. Purpose is, of course, very important. But I think the culture, the second element, is very, very important to create shared value. So we'll see what the audience says about that.
I think for us, and I know Bobby and myself have spoken about it before as well, is that we often, because we're such a big continent, we have from a shared, we've got established, if I can call it that, shared value communities. Like in the South Africa business context, we have a very established, shared value business community. We got that in Kenya as well, very established, and we're busy building that in Rwanda as well. But we always have to, we still have a lot of countries, within our community. I mean, we've got a very big community, that we have to take through the start of shared value. So, however, for our more established business communities, the playbook, I think, is going to be so important, Bobby. And I just want to say thank you for bringing it along and pushing it along, because it is something that we all need. I mean, Gail, you alluded to it earlier on, is that you always walk into a boardroom and somebody say, well, that's fine, it is about shared value, we understand it, but how do we do it? So here is a tool now that people can use to start their shared value journey. But the most important thing is you have to start with your purpose. So
listen, sorry if I can pitch in here, is that you start with your purpose, but as Bobby said, if you don't have the right culture, you're not going to go very far, right? And I think we make this very big fuss about how complicated it is, but sometimes social innovation doesn't need to be that hard. The answers are there in front of us, we just don't see them, and we just have to put on the right lenses, and then we will see them. But they're there, and it doesn't necessarily take masses of money or AI or all that. Sometimes it's just new thinking, just listening to your users and listening to your employees, because they have the answers. I really believe in that. It's your people who have the answers and who can create shared value for you if you let them.
And Gail, I would just add that given the number of entrepreneurs we have in the audience, that entrepreneurs are so much a part of creating the culture, right? As the leader, as the inspiration for the company. And so what that leader values and brings in and says is important and reinforces, either by saying, this is what I reward or this is what I don't reward, that you play a really powerful role as a leader, particularly when you are the starter of a business. So.
Absolutely. So can I ask our technical team to bring up did we see the results? No, we didn't. Here
yes.
We are. Yeah,
you have a very smart audience.
Wow, well done. You were right, girl. Yeah. So I think I'm not 100% sure, but I think we're almost out of time. So I want to say, Gail and Bobby, thank you very much. And I also just want to tell our audience is that, we've got, how many partners do we are we, Bobby? We're 5 partners, and I think 4 women and 1 male. Hey.
Yes.
So the women are driving the shared value initiative with Amit.
Yes.
And Amit was, yeah.
And Tiki, if I could just add one thing, I want to reinforce something Michael Porter said. We really want your feedback on this playbook, and we have a mailbox open, comments at purposeplaybook.org. Please send us your feedback. We really do want to make this better for you. We designed it for you, and it's the only way we're going to continue to improve the tool, and that's why we issued it as a 1.0 version. There will be a 2.0 version. So thank you so much for this time, Tiki, and for really emphasizing the playbook. And I hope that it makes a big impact in the practice of shared value.
Thank you very much, Bobby. I have no doubt that it will definitely make a difference. I've even heard about some consultants that are already using it. So so I think it is specifically in our part of the world. I think it's very much needed as well. And Gail, in closing, what would you like to share with us from it? After that, Bobby, yeah.
I would say we've always said that if purpose was your why, shared value was your how, and now you have the how with the purpose playbook. So there's no more excuses. Let's go and create shared value.
Yep, thank you very much. I agree with you. There is no excuse. And then Bobby, in closing from you.
Really just want to say, that shared value is your most powerful engine to create the change. And we hope that we have given you an opportunity to kind of demystify it. And again, I just want to underscore, please continue to give us your feedback. So thank you so much, Tiki, for hosting this conversation.
No, I want to thank you both, and Gail and Bobby, thank you very much. And we'll connect again, and we'll give you feedback on the Purpose Playbook. Thank you very much for being part of this. I'm going to ask the technical team to just play our a 2-minute shared value video on some research that we did, something that's very close to my heart, because when we started off 3 years ago, we launched 2 years ago, as we've been sharing with everybody, we decided to do research to look at the state of shared value on the Africa continent, but we realized it was too big a ask, so we decided to concentrate on South Africa, Southern Africa, and East Africa. And I just want to ask the technical team to play you a 2-minute video about that research.
In 2019, Shared Value Africa initiative embarked on a research project to determine the understanding and implementation of shared value among businesses based in Southern and Eastern Africa. This was initiated in partnership with Strathmore University Business School, which is based in Nairobi, Kenya. Currently, the research on shared value is predominantly drawn from large organizations based in developed economies. While informative, this overlooks the narratives of businesses operating in emerging economies. Therefore, this research study focused on businesses operating in South and East Africa and how they perceive CSV and its potential for creating sustainable value. Shared value can be described as follows. It is a concept developed by Harvard University professors Michael Porter and Mark Kramer, which states that companies can deliver economically beneficial strategies that simultaneously solve societal challenges. This can be done in three ways: reconceiving products and markets, redefining productivity in the value chain, and local cluster development. Though complex, measuring shared value entails linking business results to social results and benefits. Some numbers and statistics. 27 organizations were interviewed. 34% were current members of the Shared Value Africa initiative. 36% were shared value practitioners. 64% were recognized as companies that have implemented social impact activities. 73% of respondents had a clear understanding of what purpose is and how it links to creating shared value. 40% felt that they had always been purpose-driven, even if not explicitly stated. Some of the main findings include the following. If it is to work, creating shared value must be driven by top management. Partnerships are also vital for creating shared value. CSV is deeply personal. There is also a lack of participation of smaller businesses in creating shared value. Clear measurement of shared value is still a challenge, and its implementation is not always clear. Ultimately, creating shared value provides an easier way for businesses to meaningfully create social impact. From today, this research document is available from the Shared Value Africa Initiative website.
So welcome back. So just a quick little bit on that research. We did it with Strathmore Business School in Kenya. It was really great with Dr. Mumbi Wachira. And it's available on our website on www.svai.africa is our Shared Value Africa Initiative website. And then I also want to say about the Playbook as well, is that the Playbook is yes, available on the American website, but we've also got it available on our website. And I just want to say again, it's on www.svai.africa. You can go and download it from there. And if you get stuck on anything, please do not hesitate to reach out to us. We will be very happy to assist you. And then in closing today, I just want to thank every single sponsor, Old Mutual, Abbott, KCB Group, for, I'm sorry, I'm not sure what's happening at the moment. Okay, there we are. We've got thank you. So thank you to all our sponsors, Old Mutual, Abbott, and KCB. We would not have been able to do this without our sponsors. We also had a lot of partners as well, from the media industry that helped us. And also what I want to say is the last 4 days of the Shared Value Week was documented by the African Leadership University Business School from Rwanda. So in the middle of June, or I think it's the end of June, all of these reports will be available. And as everybody has said beforehand, is also all of the recordings and everything will be available on our YouTube channel, but you have to go and register on our YouTube channel, please. And so that when the material is available, you can actually go and watch it. So in closing, though, Professor Mark Kramer started our Shared Value Week, and I'm sure if some of you are still online and watched him on the first day, he was absolutely amazing. And I think what was nice is that Professor Kramer didn't shy away from what was happening, across the world at the moment, not only with COVID-19, but what is also happening in the States at the moment. And he weaved that into his overall, message to all of us. So I want us to close off with a message from Mark, which for me is very appropriate because I'm, starting with him and closing with him. So I want to say thanks again to everybody that took part in this, and I want to say thank you to the team behind all of this, because I just want to, everybody's been saying to me, oh, it must be so much easier to do a virtual summit. No. I've learned so much. And the team mocks me all the time and say I'm going to become a technophobe because I've learned so much. So thank you very much to everybody. Thanks to everybody that's listened. Thanks to everybody that's watched. And I hope that you've taken something out of this summit that will help you to go and speak to your superiors, or maybe you're a leader yourself that will look at the concept of creating shared value within your organization, because it really, really is the right thing to do. So on that note, I want to ask the technical team to please put up Mark Kramer's video, and I want to thank you all once again for being part of the Shared Value Africa Initiative's journey. Thank you very much.
The playbook that the Shared Value Initiative has recently developed is widely applicable to businesses of all sizes. We think that every business needs to embrace a social purpose. It is a way of motivating employees. It is a way of bringing other stakeholders on board. But even more than that, it is a way of finding new business models and new business opportunities that meet social needs that have been overlooked or ignored in the past. And so we see businesses of every size finding new opportunities to grow and profit by thinking hard about how they can meet the needs of underserved populations, how they can advance progress toward the UN's Sustainable Development Goals, and how they can build a social purpose that benefits the communities in which they operate into the very core of their business model and competitive positioning.